Good afternoon, folks. We'll just click on that. I'd like to welcome you to today's live stream. I'm Bruce Smith, the Westland District Mayor, and I'd like to go around the table to introduce the people who are with us here today. We'll start with Councillor Martin.
Kia ora, everyone. It's Councillor Latham Martin, Councillor for the Hokitika Ward on the Western District Council. It's really great to see that you've tuned in to hear this important session today, where we're considering probably one of the biggest issues of our time.
Chief Executive Simon Bastian.
Yeah, good afternoon, ratepayers and people tuning in. Simon Bastian, Chief Executive of Westland District Council, working alongside the councillors and the executive team and staff to actually fully understand the breadth and width of this proposal by the government for the Three Waters reform. And we're in a position of data gathering right now to understand the impacts. Thank you, Your Worship.
Next one is Councillor Davidson. You're on mute there, Councillor Davidson. Come back to you. Move on to Scott Baxendale, the Operations Manager.
Oh yeah, I'm Scott Baxendale. I'm the Group Manager for District Assets, so the Three Waters service area falls within my remit. We've been doing a lot of work on this to identify the impacts for the people of Westland.
Thanks, Scott. And Leslie Crichton, our Corporate Services Manager.
Good afternoon, I'm Leslie Crichton, Group Manager of Corporate Services, which is in Corporate Finance. So I'm working alongside the Chief Executive and the rest of the District Assets team regarding the financials around the Three Waters.
Thanks, Leslie. Councillor Anna Hart from Out the Valley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Anna Hart for the Northern Ward, Westland District Council. Thanks for tuning in on this important discussion, one of the biggest discussions we will have to make in our time, I think. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Anna. And Councillor Jane Neal.
Kia ora, everyone. Yeah, really impressed to see how much input we've had from the community on this issue. So thank you everyone for having their say and look forward to hearing more of what everyone has to say this afternoon. Cheers.
Thanks, Jane. And Councillor Davidson.
Got it this time. Yeah, my name's Paul Davidson. I'm from the Hokitika Ward. I'm also on several committees of the District Council, and I'm also here to fully understand these important issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. First of all, I want to thank all of you who have joined the Zoom or who've elected to watch it later on our YouTube channel. The meeting's to enable Council to engage with you in relation to government's Three Waters reform proposal. In a nutshell, central government wants to amalgamate and centralise water services for all 67 local councils. That's potable, which is drinking water, wastewater, which is sewage, and stormwater systems. The plan is to create 4 corporate monopolies like Auckland's Watercare, a new national regulator, Te Marama Arawai, which will present water standards, is being legislated at the present time. This comes along with warnings of a $160 billion or more injection of capital needed for upgrades across the nation. Now, your council, Westland District Council, supports the supply of good water delivered by all councils around New Zealand. As we've received more and more information from government, expanding on the benefits of the proposed reforms, it's fair to say we're struggling to see how the proposed reforms will benefit our Westland communities. The focus on water causing health issues by government is mischievous, with councils around New Zealand supplying clean, healthy water with very few exceptions. We note that our present council's LTPs reflect considerably more spending on infrastructure than has been calculated. The transfer or even the potential confiscation of, for many councils, up to 30% of total assets for 7 or 8 cents in the dollar payment feels unreasonable and perhaps even a little reckless. The proposed governance structure is complex and it removes almost all local democracy. So I'd now like to introduce you to Simon Bastian. Simon's the Chief Executive of the Westland District Council, has been for the last 4 years. He's overhauled and led the change in our operations section and has been responsible for attracting many millions of dollars of government money to allow us to upgrade a number of critical assets. Simon, all yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're in a position now of evaluating the offer made by Department of Internal Affairs and Government in regards to the Three Waters reform. It is like the worshippers and councillors have stated, a significant decision, one in a lifetime decision of this council. We're not taking this lightly in terms of understanding the breadth of this decision. So we are taking our time along with the rest of the councils in New Zealand to have a review in terms of what we do have, what has been proposed, what are the numbers being supplied by government, and evaluating our own numbers to ensure we have some sort of clear alignment in terms of what we expect out of this proposal. So back to you, Your Worship.
We'll now move to address the current situation and move to address the current feedback received and the matters of concern. And Scott and Leslie and Simon, you pick that up, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So we're about to go through a presentation we've developed for this forum. So we'll run through slide by slide. So what is Three Waters reform and how does it affect Westland? So in terms of the numbers, we have 9 water supplies ranging from Kamara all the way down to Haas, and they service 2,763 ratepayers currently connected to those systems. We have 4 wastewater supplies, obviously servicing 2,149 ratepayers, and also we have 1 reticulated stormwater supply, which is primarily around Hokitika Township and slowly growing. In terms of our Three Waters assets, drinking water, when we assess our assets, most of them are relatively new. We've invested quite considerably over the last 10 years in our water treatment facilities. Majority of them have good advances in technology, and they assure us in complete compliance requirements and compliance monitoring. We have some current upgrades occurring currently in terms of storage capacity, and we're also investing in future works as well. In terms of our wastewater treatment, we have 4 facilities within Westland, the largest one being in Hokitika. That is targeted to have a new upgrade in place 4 years. So in 2024, we will have brand new facility, completely commissioned, and a new resource consent issued. Franz Joseph Wastewater Treatment Plant. A few years ago, that new facility was signed off, and it has an approximate life of around 15 years of operation. Obviously, closer to the time, would have assessed how it's performing and make decisions about future plans for that facility. The Fox Wastewater Treatment Plant and the Haas Wastewater Treatment Plant both require upgrades and significant amount of desludging within the next 20 years. Some of the risks when evaluating what's on the horizon, discharge to waterways may need to be addressed if regulation changes require this. The fact that all of our wastewater treatment plants discharge to some sort of waterway may need to be addressed. We are looking to address this with the new Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Plant. In terms of stormwater and underground infrastructure, stormwater, as a lot of ratepayers will be aware, we have upgraded significantly within Hokitika in the last 4 years. We still have some major investments to be done over the next 5 years to address some capacity constraints. And we have further plans for upgrades over the next 3 years, and Scott will go through further details of what those projects are later on. Underground infrastructure also, this is the highest point of risk for council. A lot of these assets are coming to the end of their life, over 50 years. So once again, we have a program of rolling works to upgrade these over the next 30 years. So what is the Three Waters reform all about? So when you look at new legislation, the government passed an amendment to their health and drinking water standards to improve the water quality of public water and to protect public health. One of the recommendations out of the Havelock North inquiry saw the formation of Te Mata Arawai, who is now responsible for the oversight and enforcement of legislation relating to Three Waters and primarily drinking water standards. So that came into effect on the 1st of July this year. The government also believes, and this has been reinforced through the publicity that's coming out of Wellington, that there are greater economies of scale and efficiency gains to be had in Three Waters, with the larger body controlling that program of work than the individuals' councils can deliver on their own. In some parts of the country, the cost of providing Three Water services that meet current and future health and environmental standards is prohibitive. This means it is inconsistent across districts. The government is aiming to ensure that all districts can meet health and environmental standards. This means investing in infrastructure where they believe that large entities will have greater purchasing power. The government is also concerned that councils will not be able to meet the challenge of climate change adaptation without the reform. I'll now pass over to Leslie to take you through the financial impacts. Leslie?
Yes. Council currently has around about $117 million worth of three assets infrastructure. That equates to about 28% of Council's current balance sheet. So those assets will be coming off the balance sheet, and that's quite a big amount of value coming off our balance sheet. Our balance sheet is very important because it actually impacts what activities that are going to be left in council to the level of service we can actually continue to service those activities. We also get revenue at the moment of around about 6 million from the Three Waters rates. This is revenue that we will lose and also does impact our balance sheet and the debt that we can actually borrow. In return for these, although it is not supposed to be a package which is replacing what we're losing, we're going to get a package of around about 11 million if we opt into the Three Waters reform. So the modelling for the rates that we're going to be paying is quite complex, and I won't go into detail over that. But these are all based on averages on the domestic ratepayer. So for Westland, we've tried to model using the same methodology as the government to try and get as like for like as we possibly can. So the current average for domestic annual Three Waters rates is around about 1,079. Our projected revenue rates payment at 2051 in 30 years' time would be 3,105. And that is if council doesn't opt into the Three Waters reform. And the government, this is where there is some disparity. The government say that if we opt out, that rate will be 1,640 as an average. However, the big difference is between the projected 2051 average payment of 8,690 that the government is saying that ratepayers would have to pay if council didn't opt out. Sorry, didn't opt in. So there is a big disparity there that we do have to understand. And it is all based around what the government say is the funding that is required for the investments that will need to take place at Westland. Okay. This next one, we've got several financial matters that actually need to be reviewed. We can't do, we're working through that at the moment. We can't update on that at the moment, but there are major financial matters with stranded overheads. Overheads are costs which are not directly attributable to the Three Waters themselves. So these costs are spread among council activities as a whole. So some of these activities will have to increase the overheads in that area. Some of them we may be able to mitigate in other ways. But these things are such things as corporate overheads, IT systems, the financial system, and also the corporate headquarters building. The next matter is debt funding. We still don't have know what the government is going to do with current debt. It could be paid off. They could give us money to pay that off, and then the debt is not carried over to the entity, or the debt could be novated over to the entity. This is the same for swaps and interest rate hedges, which we use to look after the risk of interest rate increases. We know almost definitely that those are likely to stay with council, and that again can be included in the overheads. It's going to be a cost that we're going to have to carry for some time. Retained depreciation reserves, these have been built up and funded intergenerationally by the ratepayers of Westland. If we opt into the Three Waters reform, these will need to be transferred to the new entity. And together with those reserves, we will need to make a cash payment. So we will need to be able to fund that cash payment. Again, going back to our balance sheet, we will then have a better insight into what our balance sheet will look like. And the balance sheet is very important because it does determine the debt that we can actually borrow to service our other activities. And it also, we've got covenants that we have to meet, which are related to our balance sheet, that allow us to borrow at preferential cheap rates through the local government funding agency. If we can't meet those covenants, we will lose the opportunity to continue to debt fund through LGFA, and that will increase the cost of our debt funding.
Thank you, Leslie. Very comprehensive. I'll pass you over to Scott Baxendale now to take you through the capital programs of work and also the transition process.
So if you look at the graph in front of you, what we've done in Westland District Council is we've actually identified the amount of investment that we actually need to do from now until 2051. And that comes to a figure of just short of $54 million. And we've contrasted that with the blue line, which is a figure that the government have put together and that's based on a notional growth and notional improvements. And there is quite a difference between the figure that we're showing and the figure that's coming out from the government. If you then move on to the next slide, what this shows is the capital investment plan over the next 10 years. And we plan to invest $28 million in Three Waters over the next 10 years. And that's broken down into drinking water of $10 million, stormwater $2.8 million, and wastewater of $15.2 million. And within that, the listings that I put on there are what I would describe as the significant investment, everything over $500,000. So as we discussed earlier on, we got the Hokitika water mains replacement at $1.37 million. We got Hokitika water treatment plant improvements at $1.8 million. And we've got Franz Josef new water treatment plant at $3.6 million. Within stormwater, we've got the Hokitika stormwater main replacement at $887,000. And we've got Livingston Street pump upgrades at $1.6 million. And then moving through to wastewater, Hokitika wastewater lines replacement at $596,000. Fox Glacier wastewater mains at $594,000. And then, as Simon indicated earlier on, the Hokitika wastewater treatment plant, which we want to see in place by 2024 at $10.167 thousand or $10.1 million. And then we've got Hokitika wastewater mains replacement at $2.2 million and Harst wastewater treatment plant upgrades at $970,000. So there's a lot of investment going in from the council over the next 10 years, which adds to the investment that we've been putting in over the last 10 to 15 years. And in addition to these figures, Westland District Council is currently investing $6.8 million in capital water infrastructure through the Three Waters stimulus funding at no cost to local residents. And all those projects should be completed by March 2022. So just moving on to the next slide. How will the transition work? Well, transition refers to the tasks that are required to ensure that the new water entities are able to commence operations from the 1st of July 2024. And through the transition, there may need to be central oversight to ensure that council decisions align with and complement the transition process and activities of the new entities once operational, i.e. that means we need to, it will mean that Westland DC will have to conform to the direction of travel that the water entities have set out themselves. There's a likely expectation that councils will still need to bill and to collect revenue for a period immediately post the new entity formation. And as Leslie indicated earlier on, there's going to have to be a rework of the council's finances to account for the loss of revenue. That includes the impact on corporate overheads and fixed assets, i.e. office buildings, etc. The movement of any depreciation reserves to the new entity, and the impact of loss of assets from the books and the ability to raise loan finance. There's going to be quite a personal impact for staff. Those moving to a new role, potentially within a new entity, and how the terms and conditions of employment will work. And also for staff remaining behind, whose roles may need to change in a restructured environment. And the council will need to revoke certain bylaws and review other documentation that's impacted by the loss of the assets, such as the infrastructure strategy. So moving on to impacts of transition. Three Waters reform is set in the context of a future of local government review, the Resource Management Act. All these are interlinked. All will impact on future generations, but are not necessarily being considered as part of a whole package. So these things appear to be looked at in isolation. There will be future impacts, but it's not clear what the final picture is. But we're not sure that the government is taking a holistic view of these reforms. Compensation is not equitable to what the community has invested over the past 20 years in the Three Waters infrastructure, or what we propose investing in the future. We do not forecast needing to spend anywhere near the amount of money that the government is forecasting. As I showed on the slide earlier on, our investment looks nearer 54 million. And the unique nature of the geography and population of New Zealand limits the benefits that the government proposes the new entities will achieve. There's been little evidence provided that these efficiencies, aside from some economies of scale, and each council will have a different contractors and contractor relationships. As noted in previous slides, our financial forecasts do not align with the government's forecasts. The funding from users on metered water, who are generally large commercial businesses, offsets the rates paid by non-commercial ratepayers, and this reduces the average cost for domestic ratepayers. Westland is a low growth district, but the single entity will comprise of districts with different growth models, including high growth and static growth areas. This could result in a lack of funding prioritisation for smaller low growth or static districts. We do not know how much influence the community will have with the large entity. The community currently has much more say in the provision of Three Waters services through the long-term plan and the annual plan process, as can be seen with our current approach to the Hokitika Wastewater Treatment plant, where we've taken the community's view into account and changed our original plans. We are directly accountable to the community and have the resources to respond to natural hazard events as they happen. Large entities may not be able to respond as quickly or easily, depending on their processes and their governance model. Each council will have to provide due diligence data and financial information, including things like transfer of IT data, and it would have to incorporate, during the transition, potentially 67 different approaches to service delivery. So in terms of what the community has told us so far, I think the key messages that are coming out is that the majority of people that have fed back to us are not wanting to opt in to Three Waters reform. People believe that communities will lose their democratic say in the way that services are provided. They want services to be managed, built, and operated locally, and they don't believe that the reform will improve efficiencies. Concerns have been raised around the previous consolidation of assets in other areas where it's not necessarily improved the provision of services. And clearly each region has different needs. So this view is that it takes away control from local ratepayers. The process is seen as undemocratic and being forced on councils. And there is a question around, does the government actually have proof that councils cannot manage the assets themselves? And there is also concern around assets being taken and how that control will be exercised in relation to Maori.
Thank you, Scott. In terms of what happens next, so council will provide feedback to the government following this consultation, but also following its own review internally to government in October. Following this period of engagement, the government will then make decisions on the next steps on the reform process, including mechanisms for further community consultation. So there is a right, because water is a strategic asset, or water assets are strategic assets of council, proper full consultation needs to take place in terms of any further decisions. So there'll be another round of community consultation following this. Thank you, Your Worship. That's the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Simon and Scott. That was very comprehensive. Now, I'd like to remind people of how they can provide feedback. First of all, the answers to all of those questions that have been received from the community over the last week are available on the District Council website, and it's on the Three Waters reform page. So go into the site, have a look down to the left-hand side, you'll see the button, click on it, and there is a mass of information, both from government, feedback, and presentations. Now, I would encourage people to have a look there, to find out if your concern's been addressed, if it's been answered, and what's more important now is if you're out there and you want to be involved, and I hope you do, it's really important that we know as council, do you want council to opt in? Hey, let us know. Would you like council to opt out? Just as important, let us know. If you've got feedback of any nature and you would like to email, the email address is 3waters reform@westland.govt.nz. Or you may wish to use the feedback form on council's website. So once again, go to the website. On the left-hand side is the Three Waters link and click on submission form. It's really, look, it's well designed, it's easy to use, and that's important. Now, you might not be into computers, and that's fine as well, because you can post your feedback to council, or you can drop it into reception when we hit level 2. Hopefully that'll be later today. So as a wrap up, look, the consequences of this proposal are far reaching, and it's an important matter that I know you're concerned about, like me. It deserves our attention. So my hope is that you'll make very clear to us what your views are. I'd like, before I close the meeting, just to go round to give the councillors present chance, just to encourage you to make sure you give the feedback. Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Really good presentation there, Scott, on that. I'm pretty sure that people will have a better understanding with this issue after that presentation. So I really strongly advocate that people do get out and have their say. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, staff, for the great presentation, and I encourage all ratepayers to get a submission in on your preferred option in the Three Waters reform, because this is a very important, significant decision that we as council and councillors have to make. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Neal.
Thanks, Bruce. And yeah, thank you to the staff, and not just for the presentation, but also for the willingness to answer any other questions that do come up. So yeah, members of the community, get in there and have your say, either through the computer, through paper, or speak to one of us. Look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. And to wrap up, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks to our executive team. The presentation was very informing, and for those people that are seeing it for the first time, I hope that they've found takeaways from that and it given you a real idea of the quality position that Westland's in terms of our infrastructure and assets. It's really important that you communicate to us as your councillors through the submission process so we can take your views into account and use them to inform what we do and how we respond to government. And I have to say, at the moment, most of the submissions I'm getting and the phone calls I'm receiving are strongly encouraging people to opt out of this process. So looking forward to hearing your feedback.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Now, to those of you that have attended today, thank you so much. If you've got friends that have missed this, let them know that at 6 p.m. tonight, we will have a further session and we'll run through the entire thing again. And by then, I'll be able to give you an update on the numbers and those that are wishing to opt in and those that are wishing to opt out. At the last meeting, we were sitting at 97% of all of the people in Westland who had responded wanting out, and some of them in a very strong West Coast way, is all I can say. Look, thank you so much for attending. To the staff, thank you very much. It was very comprehensive, very easy to follow. To councillors, it's great to see you here again, as you always are. And we'll catch you later.